I'm really proud that I grew up my whole life in Waterloo region. I was born at KW Hospital, as it was called then. Grew up in Preston in my early years, went to the municipal pool, learned how to swim there, went to the library in the summer. Grew up along the Grand River, and it was just such an idyllic childhood. I wish everybody could have the kind of running through farmers' fields and yet living in a subdivision where I had friends to play with. It was an absolutely idyllic way to grow up. Went to the two local universities. I actually started out at U of T, but graduated from Waterloo, and then graduated in 2012 with a master's in poli-sci from Laurier. Well, after Warren and I were married, we were blessed very quickly with 4 children. As a matter of fact, we had 4 kids in 5 years. So I was an at-home mom for quite a while, but being a recent honors English graduate, one of the things I did was some freelance writing when the kids were little. And when our youngest son, Jim, went off to Shepherd School to grade 1, I ran for the school board. At that point in time, I had done a lot of volunteering in the school and a lot of advocacy for my children. And it occurred to me that that's something that I could offer other parents in the role of being a trustee. So sort of from the roots of activism, I ran for public school trustee. I found being a school trustee amazingly rewarding, and I still think that public education is one of the premier pieces of policy that we need to do, because it's the great leveler for, depending on what your background is or your socioeconomic base. I was approached to run for city council in Kitchener. I was elected, and by virtue of my experience as a school trustee, I asked my colleagues on Kitchener City Council to support me being their representative at regional council, and I was successful. At that point in time, I realized how rewarding being at regional council was. We dealt with childcare, we dealt with public health, we dealt with a lot of social services, as well as the economy, marketing the region, and it was, in my view, one of the most personally rewarding experiences I had serving the public. So while I was on sitting regional council in Waterloo region, I was approached by a sitting member of parliament if I had ever considered running for that office, and was I interested. And it was an amazing experience. We had taken the kids the year before to visit Parliament, and it's such an impressive place, and you get the sense that that's where history is made. So when I went, I really took my grassroots with me, and I was on the finance committee to start with when Paul Martin was finance minister, and that was really interesting times, because we were dealing with the deficit and bringing the budget for the federal government back into balance. Then I was assigned to the Ministry of Environment, and that was such a broad portfolio, but really interesting times. We dealt with species at risk, and it was during that time that we were signatories as a nation to the Kyoto Protocol. So when I look locally at greenhouse gas emissions and environmental issues, that really resonates with me, because I spent a lot of my time getting up to speed on those issues. I was chief government whip for Paul Martin in government, and then I was chief opposition whip when we moved from government to opposition. And most people, if they understand what a whip's position is, they figure it's discipline and management of your caucus colleagues, which it absolutely is. But you're also on another team where I would meet several times a day often with the whips from the Conservative Party, the NDP, and the Bloc, and we would work out how we were going to manage moving legislation through the House, if we were going to have extended hours, and all of that was done with a consensus. But the whole time that I was a member of Parliament and going back and forth to Ottawa, I always had an advisory committee, and I met with them about quarterly. And these weren't necessarily people that were of my partisan stripe. These weren't necessarily people that had worked on my campaigns. And I found that that sounding board was really, really important to keep me rooted in the things that mattered in Waterloo region. And it's why it's one of the things that I'm one of my platform planks running for regional chair. It's really important to recognize that there are some times when legislation or policy decisions have unintended consequences. And it's only by hearing from people who are very objective and know that you are going to take their issues under consideration. That kind of honest dialogue really kept me grounded and kept me knowing what we were doing in Ottawa and how it affected the people in Waterloo region. And during my time in Parliament, I saw federal dollars come to support local initiatives that meant a lot to our community. the expansion of the University of Waterloo Architectural School in Cambridge, the research park at the University of Waterloo named after David Johnston. The LRT was implemented, and Perimeter Institute. And I think when I talk about my political career, I really want to emphasize it's the skills that I gained and the learning that I gained in those leadership roles that I now bring to the role of a regional chair. It's consensus building, collaboration, recognizing that nobody's a one-man band. We all have to work with the colleagues around the horseshoe. We need to work with the province, and we need to work with the federal government. This is my hometown. Lots of people move into Waterloo Region, love the quality of life, and say, I'm going to make this my hometown too. That's going to continue happening, but there are challenges ahead. I want to bring my skill set and my experience to leadership at Waterloo Region to make sure that the prosperity that we've all enjoyed growing up here continues for our children and our grandchildren.
On October 22nd, vote Karen Redman for chair of Waterloo Region. She brings the values, experience, and vision we need.